morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told out of Voice of Radio, and I've been tweeting out about Spiritomb lately, and how I still think Spiritomb's good. And I've had a bunch of questions from lovely people saying, Wossy, prove it. Show us your Spiritomb list. So I thought I would. Now I'm going to go through the list kind of quickly here. It is very much built around Spiritomb. You've got the ability that puts 1 damage counter on, and an attack that does 10 damage, plus 30 more for each damage counter on that Pokemon. And we've lost things like Rainbow Energy, but we've got Spikemuth. Whenever a Pokemon goes from the active to the bench, whether that's from retreating or switching, you put 2 damage counters on it. You've then got Cape of Toughness, which has gone and replaced Hustle Belt, gives you an extra 50 HP. So now Spiritomb's got 110 HP and can do up to 300 damage. Not every time, but yes, it definitely works sometimes. We need lots of switching, so we got 4 Scoop Up Net here. Although obviously if you Scoop Up Net a Pokemon, you do heal it as well, so be careful with that. And 4 copies of Switch. And while we're flicking around, we might as well pop Jirachi as our draw engine of choice. Look at the top 5 cards when you're in the active, find a trainer, put it in your hand, go to sleep. This is our draw card of choice. Now, we do have a couple copies of Jinx, lets you move damage from one Pokemon to another, and this essentially, you can put 2 or 3 of your Spiritomb in play, but get all the damage from the 3 or 2 abilities onto the one Spiritomb, which really, really helps out quite nicely indeed. Now, we do have one of the Hooper that does 10 damage plus 20 more for each ability your opponent's got on the field. Sometimes that'll hit decent damage and get cheeky KOs. And we got one of the Hooper with Assault Gate, 90 if it became active this turn. We're doing lots of switching anyway. And if we go second, I've donked a bunch using this card. Turn 1, 90 damage will get a lot of things. If we go second and our opponent has just left a Jinx or a Spiritomb or a Jirachi or some kind of evolving basic in the active, I could probably win the game turn 1 with Hooper. And I have multiple times. We're playing 4 Scoop Up Net, so we might as well go 1 Galarian Zigzagoon to drop damage down and reuse it with Scoop Up Net. Because, that's fun. We need to have Mew to protect our bench. We play 1 Black Market Prism Star. Now, this can be annoying because when we've got this out, we're not getting Spikemuth for our damage. But it does mean we give up 1 fewer prize when KO, so it's kind of important, honestly. Kind of need Black Market Prism Star. And then the other weird thing we've got here is 1 Sableye IV and 2 Turbo Patch. And I'll be honest, this has not worked out very well for me up to now. I am not loving it, but I don't know what else to do. Because for really big Pokemon, what Sableye does is 10 damage base plus 60 more for each damage counter on your opponent's active. So you hit him with Spiritomb or you hit him with one of your Hooper, etc., and then Sableye KOs. The problem is, you've basically, in today's format, got to Sableye, Turbo Patch, attach, attack, because there's too many people playing too many Boss's Orders and too many Crushing Hammer, that most of the time, if I cannot bent Sableye and hit a Turbo Patch the turn I need it, my opponent will either Crushing Hammer so I don't have the energy on Sableye, or more likely they'll just Boss's Orders it up and KO it. I am not 100% sure about this Sableye list. No, well, that's not Sableye in. It's really a Spiritomb list, but I do think there is an awful lot of potential. So I went and played a couple of random games with this the other day. Let's see how they went. Alrighty then, so we are just going to see a couple of random games I did play with this deck. I went on to PTCGO, went on Versus, and decided to just go for it. Now, obviously, what we really need to do is play hundreds of games against every possible different deck, but that is ironically not always actually possible. Sad face. But this will give you an idea of what the deck does and how the deck runs. Now, the Squirtle sleeves are not giving much away. I did have to take a mulligan there. What am I going to get? Oh, okay, that is a decent starting hand. I've got a Jirachi, which will get me a new trainer card. I've got a Scoop Up Net to get it out the active, a Quick Ball to get myself a Spiritomb. I've got a Darkness Energy for the Spiritomb. I've got a Cape of Toughness for the Spiritomb. And then a Professor's Research. Bearing in mind, I will then have a Darkness Energy and a discard for Turbo Patch. Yeah, that's kind of awesome. Oh, don't love Ordinary Rod because that's going to get discarded, but it could be worse. So it's actually the legendary Bird Trio. And looks like a Reshiram and Zekrom. So we've got some kind of weird tag team GX deck thing. And this is a decent test for Spiritomb, because one of the things that Spiritomb does is it wins very specific matchups. It's also phenomenal against single prize decks. One of the difficulties, or do we go Marnie? No, we don't get anything and we just Professor's Research. So one of the difficulties of Spiritomb is taking out, 300 HP Pokemon. But you're only a single prizer, so if we can get set up well enough in this game, we're going to be alright. We're going to make it work if we can get set up. So we do play the Professor's Research. That's going to give us a new hand of 7 cards. And what do we see? So we got a Galarian Zigzagoon, we got a Hooper, we got Spikemuth and some switches. We can work with that. We can Spikemuth, we can switch into something and then use U-turn board to free retreat. So that could work very nicely. Now, it depends what we want on the bench, but we can certainly start building up some damage here. The issue is we don't actually have a backup Spiritomb. And that's what you kind of need here. I mean, we've got the Hooper that does 90 if it became active this turn, but one of the difficulties we find with Spiritomb is that we end up in an awkward situation where we build up one big Spiritomb, but it's got so little damage, it's kind of guaranteed to get KO'd, and then when it does get KO'd, we don't necessarily have something to back it up with. Now, weirdly, because we're playing a couple copies of Jinx, we really don't mind the damage on the Galarian Zigzagoon, because we can just move it from that over to Spiritomb later on. So the real question is, what does my opponent have this turn? Now, clearly they're playing some kind of welder deck, but Trinity Burn, it needs a water and a fire and a lightning and another. Oh, and they didn't even get the double attach with welder. So had they got the double attach with welder there, then that water energy actually would have given them the attack and the KO, but I've gotten a little bit lucky there. My opponent was in a position where they could have got the KO on Spiritomb and put me in a really awkward position. But this is what Spiritomb does, because now I should be able to get a KO there. Now, I'm not there yet. I need a few more things, a couple of Jinx, etc. And this is where the bench really comes into play. Because I want to bench Hooper, but what I really want is Spiritomb double Jinx. Again, this will be a great Sableye turn, but do I really want to risk getting the Turbo Patch and then flipping heads? It's just such an awkward decision. I want my bench to be, I want to get a Spiritomb to build up next turn, and I want 2 Jinx to start building up. But I'm essentially, I'm playing the odds here. I'm going, you know what? We don't even hit Turbo Patch. We do hit a Jinx, which is cool. Now, as it stands at the moment, see, we don't even have an energy. What we could have done was retreated, if we haven't already, and then potentially use Scoop Up Net on a Jirachi, but I suppose we could still do that, but we were risking not having the energy here. So we are going to be able to Building Spike. That puts 4. And then Ominous Posture, like we say, off the Zigzagoon, puts me up to 5. That's 160. That's 270 total. We need 1 more damage. We need 1 more damage counter on here. I think we're currently 60 damage short. Now, have I spotted the play? I've got it on the board. Have I spotted it? Come on, Wassy. Come on, Wassy. Don't let me down. You've got it. You've got it on the board. You've got it on the board, Wassy. Oh, it's right there. For anyone that's wondering what I can do, I can Scoop Up Net the Jinx, and then I'm essentially playing the Jinx as a new Pokemon, which will allow me to use the ability again. Oh, I've not done it. See, now I'm an energy short. Oh, but I do get the Turbo Patch. I'll be honest with you, this is... If I hit the heads on Turbo Patch, I've totally done it. And... Oh, my opponent's just scooped. We never even got to see if I hit the heads. I could have done that more easily by Scoop Up Net in the Jinx. If I hit the heads on Turbo Patch, I don't hate that play, because then I'm putting my opponent in a really awkward position where if they don't get a KO, I have legitimately got a minimum 9 damage Spiritomb next turn. And I know Spiritomb's easy to KO, but what that game basically shows you is... I mean, with Spiritomb, you rarely get the big explosive games. You rarely get the turn 1, I'm hitting for 160. far less than you did back when we had Rainbow Energy and what's it called? What's that tool called? The one what did more damage. Hustle Belt. You have lost the explosive turn ones. But what Spikemuth and a bunch of switching cards will do for you is it will essentially give you extra damage consistently throughout the game. So you kind of give up the giant attacks early. You do it occasionally, but not really enough to be that relevant. But you do get the games like we just saw there, where I'm just like, oh, yeah, all of a sudden I've got like a 7 damage counter Spiritomb, which is hitting for 220, which I was not doing pre-rotation. So that's kind of awesome. Now, this is not a great start. We got Turbo Patch, we got Quick Ball. I'm starting with my 1 Sableye. I was playing 2 Sableye and 4 Turbo Patch. I cut it down for a bit of extra consistency. But it also means Sableye works a lot less. Honestly, I kind of want to cut Sableye from the deck entirely. But the issue I have is if I cut Sableye from the deck, what do? Because I don't think just going for Spiritomb necessarily gives me the oomph I need in every game. When I'm against single prize decks, works beautifully. When I'm hitting for weakness or I've get really good starts, I'm good. But if I'm not hitting for weakness and I don't get a much better start than my opponent and they're using stuff like Center Scorch, Mewtwo and Mew, etc., I do potentially run into trouble. Something that very much needs to be borne in mind. So, we're against a Center Scorch. Can we beat I hope we can beat Center Scorch. Be nice if we could. It's not an easy matchup. It really isn't an easy... And I honestly cannot remember how this game went. Obviously, I'm recording after the fact. I recorded this in the evening when my children could have woken up at any time and commentary would have been a very bad idea. But it's been a few days, so let's just say it's kind of coming out fresh. Now, we got a Spiritomb, we got the damage, we got the Cape of Toughness, we've got the energy. We then get to play a Quick Ball, getting rid of the Turbo Patch. That's the right call, because I might need the boss's orders and I might need everything else, so... that was the right call, as much as I hate to lose it. Now we got the switch, and we can switch over into Jirachi. And we got Spikemuth. We got a couple of supporters we've already got. So I think Spikemuth has got to be the right choice there. Because Black Market, it's too early in the game for Black Market Prism Star. Black Market into Prism Star is generally when games aren't going as well as you'd like, or when you just need kind of a one prize reprieve, so to speak. So you drop a Black Market Prism Star down and you go, well, this will save me for the time being, right? It ain't perfect, but this will do for now. So there is an energy onto the Volcanion of my opponent. And obviously they're going to get the energy rolling. I'm going to need... It's things like Volcanion that screw me up with Spiritomb. Because it's a 4 damage counter KO. 3 damage counters does 100. I need the 4th damage counter. And it's a bit too big. If that makes sense. Now, my opponent does get the Heatran here. That's something we see in like every fire deck. That's alright. We can live with that. And essentially it's just a way of having a big attack later on in the game. It's something they're going to be looking for towards the end of the game to essentially see if they've got stuff rolling, if they need a big KO towards the end. Having said that, I mean, come on. Does it look like they're going to need a KO with Heat? Maybe on the Sableye, I suppose, but hey-ho. So my opponent is going to get the energy out here, presumably onto their Center Scorch, and then the question is really going to come down to, well, all right, what do you got? Like, can I be KOing the Center Scorch? Can I have those big mid-game turns? Now, you'll notice Spikemuth didn't go down last turn. Oh, it did, sorry, got replaced. Went down this turn. And, oh my goodness, all Jirachi's doing is getting us more supporters. Now, this is an awkward one for me, I'll be honest with you. Because I'm giving up a lot of supporters for this play. I mean, I'm clearly going Professor's Research. I'm giving up a lot of supporters to make this play. The reason I'm going so aggressive here is frankly because it's an unfavourable matchup. I don't believe this is a game I'm going to win. And because I don't believe it's a game I'm going to win a lot of the time, because I don't like playing against Center Scorch, too high HP, etc., I kind of have the option of going, you know what, I don't really care. Not in an I'm not trying to win, but in an if I just play really conservatively and I try and conserve my supporters, this isn't going to work. I need to make sure I am doing everything that I can to make sure that I am giving myself a chance to pull out an unlikely victory. Now, you notice that's my second turbo patch, and I've got to get rid of it, and I hate it. I don't want to get rid of it. I don't really have much of a choice. Now, I can put the energy onto Sableye here, but the thing is, if I was hitting Center Scorch this turn, it would be fine, but I'm not. And incidentally, it should really be mentioned here, one of the great things about Spiritomb Sableye when it works is you get kind of like 4 or 5 damage counters on a Spiritomb, and then you drop Sableye, and you attack with Spiritomb. And your opponent may well boss his orders Sableye, but if they do, you've got the KO with Spiritomb, and if they don't, you've got the KO with Sableye, and you can set up an almost impossible position. Here, unfortunately, all we've got is just... well, we've got a Volcanion. So I can move the damage over and I can get a KO with the Spiritomb. And this is what's super awkward here. I've kind of got to KO the Volcanion. But I don't want to KO the Volcanion. I want to be gusting up and KOing the 2 prize Pokemon on the bench. No, I'm giving up the Jirachi. Essentially here, I am hoping that I can get a big KO. I'm playing, and this might backfire, right? If my opponent drops a boss's orders and KOs a Spiritomb, I don't really have much on the board at all here. But essentially, I saw the way the next couple turns was going to go, and I was going to KO the Volcanion, and then Centiskorch was going to KO me, and I'd have to start again trying to build stuff up, and it just wasn't something I was in the mood for. So I figured, you know what, let's just do this. Now, this is actually going to work. Oh, I'm 1 damage counter short. How are we going to do this? I need an energy. Essentially, as it stands at the moment, now remember, my opponent's got a burning energy on there, or a heat fire energy. So essentially, I need to do 230, so I need 8 damage counters. So, there's 5. Building Spike will make it 6. And then Ominous Posture will make it 7. Oh, no, I can Zigzagoon, ladies and gentlemen. I can Zigzagoon. So here, I am hitting for 220. I need to do 230, but Galarian Zigzagoon will drop 1 damage counter on my opponent's active Center Scorch, and then I can get the KO with Spiritomb for 2 gigantic prizes. Oh, I like this. I like this a lot. And, of course, I'm not over-damaging the Spiritomb, so that's pretty good. The other thing we need to bear in mind... Oh, no, it doesn't really matter. I was going to say the Volcanion is not getting a big attack, but it's still doing 50, so it's still all right. And now it really is just trying to get something rolling, trying to build up for next time. So I've got another Spiritomb, I've got another Giant Cape. I don't have any damage on it. But I've got 2 Spiritomb, and I'm going to have 2 Jinx next turn, and a Professor's Research, and you can see here that this game is building up quite nicely. Because now I am going to be able to get 4 damage counters on a Spiritomb to take out a Volcanion, and I'm starting to put my opponent in an awkward position. I just took a lot of their energy off the field. I took out their main attacker. So are they really going to be able to consistently get Volcanion rolling? And even if they do, Volcanion does 50 unless there's 4 damage on the field. And if I've got a Cape of Toughness on Spiritomb, and I've got 4 damage counters on, that gives me 70 damage left on, which means that I legitimately can essentially avoid a KO from Volcanion. So this is starting to look good. I am starting to be kind of excited about this, if I'm honest with you. This is a matchup I don't like, because there are too many games that my opponent sets up 1 Center Scorch, and I don't get the damage on Spiritomb fast enough, and I lose. But it's not an unwinnable matchup. It's awkward. No one's saying it's not awkward. But now here comes Center Scorch again. But they're only doing 20 damage unless they VMAX. Oh, now I love it when I'm playing a deck like this, I love it when my opponent benches a Dedenne. Because my opponent benching a Dedenne is my way, I just think of that as, oh, cool, I'm going to boss his orders out for 2 prizes in a couple of turns. That cool with you? And my opponent doesn't answer because they can't hear me, but it kind of has to be cool with them. So Giant Half goes down, but I've got a Spike Muff in hand ready to roll. And what does my opponent do? They have got to get a KO this turn. If they don't get a KO this turn, the game's over. It's literally over. Because I will KO that Center Scorch with Spiritomb, because I can have easy 9 damage on there. And then at some point I draw into a boss's orders or take a KO and I win the game. So my opponent has got, and this is what I was talking about in the previous game. Sometimes your opponent just doesn't draw well early game. And if your opponent doesn't draw well early game to the point where they just don't actually have a KO, and most of the time they can, right? But if your opponent cannot KO the Spiritomb, you win. Like, instantly. A Spiritomb unchecked is a terrifying thing in the modern Pokemon TCG. Oh, not only has he done that, he's actually put more damage on. So he's going to get rid of my energy, but I'm in a situation now where if I've got an energy, that's basically game. Oh, now here's an awkward decision. I want the energy. I need the energy. But I also want boss's orders. Boss's orders in hand guarantees me to win next turn. But doesn't guarantee me to win. I need to get a bit of damage on, but you know what I mean. And you see, I'm healing off my active Spiritomb, so I just don't need it. So what do? Do I use Bird Keeper? No. See, that is the right call. I don't really want to get... There's the energy. I didn't want to get rid of my Jinx. And I didn't want to get rid of my boss's orders. But it was one of those where getting the KO this turn would put me in such a favourable position. And the fact of the matter is, my opponent's got to attack with something next turn. It's probably going to be a Center Scorch, so I feel like I'm in a decent position. Now, I don't want the Jirachi back. I've got one, so I get my Jinx, I get my energy. I'm kind of alright with that. I don't want to pad my deck. I want to be able to draw into what I need. So now I'm going to be able to Angerish Cry for 250. That's going to get a KO on the Center Scorch. And now I'm in a really good position. And the difference between this and some other games is that I've got 2 Spiritomb on the bench. I've got my Jinx on the bench. Actually, I've got a Quick Ball to get a second Jinx. I've got the setup. And honestly, I don't really need to take out the VMAX. I need a boss's orders. That's what I really need. And I've got Scoop up next, so I can use Jirachi for free next turn. Also, you'll notice in these games, I'm just casually using Jirachi with Scoop up net and Switch. It ain't perfect. Obviously, if a skateboard was still legal, I'd be using it. But I really do think that in a lot of decks, Jirachi is still totally viable. Perfect? No. No one's saying it's perfect. No one's saying Jirachi is quite as redonk as it was pre-rotation. But it still functions without a skateboard just fine. Also, as a quick side note, people have been saying they want more PTCGO, more gameplay on this channel. So make sure you watch this video, tell your friends, share it around, etc. If these PTCGO videos are popular, I will do more of them. Maybe in a couple of days I'll show you my latest Excadrill list. And we'll play a few games. That could be fun, right? I'm hoping the answer's yes. I love Excadrill. I like Spiritomb. Spiritomb and Excadrill are my favourite cards to play with in the format. For anyone that's wondering, yes, I am working on a post-rotation version of Spiritomb Excadrill. No, it's not working well enough at the moment. There's too many. They're too different nowadays. Having lost unit energy, having lost rainbow energy, it's super awkward. It really is. And then you really need Martial Arts Dojo for Excadrill, but you really need Spikemuth for Spiritomb. And you really need Vitality Band for Excadrill, but you really need Cape of Toughness for Spiritomb. I've made a list, but it's too awkward and clunky. So this is what it comes down to, ladies and gentlemen. Now, you'll notice that when active for a very obvious reason. Spikemuth is in play, so I get to Building Spite. And then I can retreat into Jirachi. And this is what I mean. In the mid-game, this can go quite well. Because now I've got 50 on, but I've got Jinx. And I could get a second Jinx if I wanted to. Oh, look, it's a second Jinx. And if we hit boss's orders, we've already got game. We've got game on the board. Boss's orders, we just scoop up Net the Jirachi, KO the bench to Dene, game's over. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm thinning out my deck a little bit. I'm taking a random Pokemon out my deck. It doesn't really matter what I take out. It's going to be a Spiritomb. But all I'm really doing is putting fewer cards in my deck so that now my chance of hitting Boss's orders off Jirachi is just a tiny bit higher than it was before. There's one fewer card in my deck. So, and there we go. We've hit the Boss's orders, and we're actually going to beat an honest-to-goodness Center Scorch. And by 6 prizes to 2, might I add. When Spiritomb works, when it fires, when it does what it's supposed to do, and I could be doing even more damage here. Am I going to jinx over? Yeah, I do this sometimes in practice games. I want to see how well I could do. Sorry if that annoys anyone. And then we hit for 220, which would have been enough to KO a Center Scorch V, incidentally. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. That's the game, and Spiritomb doesn't win. So you know the deal at this stage. Comment, like, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at TheWassy. You know all this deal by now. That's my Center Scorch deck. I'm not sure how great it is, but I do know it is an awful lot of fun. We'll have to wait and see as to how competitively viable it really could be. For now, I'd love to know your thoughts about it, so go nuts in the comment section, be nice, and I'll see you all again rather soon. Bye. Oh, look after yourselves till next time. That's important.